I'm Claire, 67 years old, and a retired nurse from Seattle. After my husband died, I moved in with my son Justin, his wife Melissa, and my grandkids. For 3 years, I contributed my small pension and helped around the house. Then, they won $63 million in the lottery, and suddenly, I wasn't welcome anymore. What they didn't know was that I had secrets of my own. I wasn't as financially helpless as they thought. Where are you watching from today? Hit that like and subscribe button, and let me know in the comments if you'd forgive family who only wanted you when they needed something. My nursing career spanned 4 decades at Seattle General Hospital. I loved every minute of it, caring for patients during their most vulnerable moments. The pay was modest, but the work fulfilled me in ways money never could. My husband Robert and I were high school sweethearts who built a comfortable life together. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we had enough. When Robert was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 5 years ago, our world shattered. He fought bravely for 2 years before passing away in his sleep, holding my hand. I still feel the emptiness of that moment every day. After the funeral and settling his affairs, I realized I couldn't maintain our house on just my pension and the small life insurance payout. Most of our savings had gone to Robert's medical expenses, not covered by insurance. That's when Justin offered to have me move in with his family. "Mom, we have plenty of room," he said. "The kids would love having you around, and it would help us too." At first, I hesitated, valuing my independence, but the financial reality was clear, and the thought of being near my grandchildren, Thomas and Amber, was too appealing to resist. The first year living with them was mostly harmonious. I cooked dinners 4 nights a week, helped the kids with homework, and kept the house tidy while Justin and Melissa worked. I contributed $800 monthly from my pension toward household expenses, which Justin always accepted gratefully. Melissa was cordial enough, though I noticed her eyes light up whenever I gave her my monthly contribution. She'd always had expensive taste, constantly comparing their lifestyle to her friends from the country club where she worked as an event coordinator. Their house in the suburbs was lovely, but stretched their budget thin. Justin worked as a sales manager at a local car dealership, and his income fluctuated month to month. Thomas and Amber quickly became the light of my days. Thomas at 15 was entering that phase where grandparents suddenly become cooler than parents. He'd sit with me for hours discussing his interest in computer programming or asking about what life was like in the old days. Amber, 12 going on 20, initially kept her distance, but warmed up when I taught her to bake my famous chocolate chip cookies. Soon, she was confiding in me about school drama and early crushes. As the months passed, I began noticing strain in the household. Justin would come home tense after work, especially near the end of slower sales months. Melissa's spending didn't adjust to their financial reality. I overheard arguments about credit card bills and unnecessary purchases. "We can't keep living paycheck to paycheck," Justin would say. "Maybe if you'd get the promotion you've been talking about for years, we wouldn't have to," Melissa would retort. These arguments usually ended with slammed doors and days of tense silence. One evening, after a particularly heated argument, I found Justin at the kitchen table staring at a stack of bills. I made him tea and sat beside him. "I never thought it would be this hard, Mom," he confessed. "Dad always made providing for the family look easy." I placed my hand over his. "Your father and I struggled too, especially in the early years. You kids never knew because we kept it from you." Justin sighed, running his hand through his hair, now showing flecks of gray at 38. Melissa wants a bigger house, private schools, for the kids' vacations, like her friends take. I just can't make it happen. That's when the lottery tickets began. Every Friday, Justin would stop on the way home and purchase tickets for the weekend drawing. It started as 2 tickets, then 5, eventually growing to $20 worth each week. Melissa called it their retirement plan. I worried about this habit, but kept my concerns to myself. They were adults after all. Little did I know that those colorful pieces of paper would soon upend all our lives. The night that changed everything was a typical Friday. I had made my famous pot roast, the children had finished their homework, and we gathered in the living room after dinner. The weekly lottery drawing was about to begin on television. Tonight's jackpot is $63 million, the animated host announced. Could you be our next multimillionaire? Justin clutched their tickets, while Melissa painted her nails, pretending not to care, despite checking every number. Thomas and Amber were sprawled on the floor, half paying attention, while playing games on their tablets. First number is 8, the host called out. Got it, Justin said, without much enthusiasm. This routine had played out dozens of times before. Next number is 17. Justin straightened slightly. Got that too. As each number was called, the atmosphere in the room transformed. By the 5th number, Justin was standing, his hands shaking. Melissa had abandoned her nail polish, her mouth hanging open. And the final number is 42. The silence lasted precisely 2 seconds before chaos erupted. Justin stared at the ticket, checking and rechecking the numbers, while Melissa screamed and jumped up and down. We won. We actually won. Justin's voice was barely recognizable, higher-pitched than I'd ever heard it. Oh my God! Oh my God! Melissa grabbed the ticket from Justin's hands, her eyes wild with disbelief. $63 million. We're rich. The children caught their excitement, jumping and shouting, though they didn't fully comprehend what had happened. I sat quietly, happy for them, but feeling a strange unease I couldn't quite place. We need champagne. Do we have champagne? Melissa was frantically opening kitchen cabinets. Finding none, she sent Justin to the store immediately, who left in such a hurry he was still wearing his house slippers. We're millionaires, Mom. Melissa hugged me, something she rarely did. Our lives are changed forever. I noticed her use of our and felt included in that moment, perhaps the last time I truly would be. Justin returned with 3 bottles of expensive champagne. That night, the adults stayed up until dawn, drinking and planning. Melissa wanted a mansion in Bellevue. Justin dreamed of exotic cars. They talked about private schools for the kids, vacation homes, yachts, and first-class trips around the world. I smiled and nodded occasionally, suggesting they consider setting aside money for the children's college funds and retirement. Mom, we'll have more money than we could spend in 3 lifetimes. Justin laughed, dismissing my practical concerns. By morning, their plans had grown even more extravagant. They called in sick to work and spent the day researching how to claim their winnings. They learned they'd need to go to the lottery headquarters and would have the option of a lump sum payment or annuity. After taxes, the lump sum would be approximately $34 million, still an astronomical amount. We should talk to financial advisors before making any decisions, I suggested, over breakfast. Already on it, Justin replied, barely looking up from his phone. Melissa's cousin knows someone who manages money for wealthy clients. I noticed I was no longer being included in the conversations. When they said we, now, they meant Justin and Melissa, not the family unit, including me. That evening, they arranged a celebration dinner at Wellington's, the most expensive restaurant in Seattle. I wore my nicest dress, a simple blue number I'd worn to church on Easter. Melissa frowned when she saw me. "Is that what you're wearing?" she asked, adjusting her new designer dress purchased that afternoon. "It's my best," I replied simply. She exchanged a look with Justin I pretended not to see. At the restaurant, they ordered $500 bottles of wine and the most expensive items on the menu. They talked loudly about their win, enjoying the attention from nearby tables. I sat quietly, picking at my $90 steak, feeling increasingly like an outsider at my own family's celebration. On the drive home, I overheard Melissa whispering to Justin, "We need to talk about your mom." Justin nodded, glancing at me in the rearview mirror before quickly looking away. That night, I lay awake, wondering what their sudden fortune would mean for our family dynamic. "Money changes people," Robert always said. I was beginning to fear he was right. The changes began subtly at first. Melissa stopped asking me about dinner plans, instead, ordering expensive takeout that often went half-eaten. My offers to help around the house were met with, "We're hiring a cleaning service," or "Don't worry about it." Justin started coming home later, excited about meetings with financial advisors and real estate agents that I wasn't invited to. When I asked how things were going, his answers became vague and dismissive. "It's complicated stuff, Mom. Lots of financial jargon you wouldn't understand." I might have reminded him that I had managed a hospital department's budget for 15 years, but I held my tongue. The distance growing between us hurt more than his condescension. The children sensed the shift as well. One evening, Thomas asked me, "Grandma, are you sad you don't smile as much anymore?" "Just tired, sweetheart," I assured him, though the perceptive boy didn't look convinced. Amber noticed Melissa's changing attitude toward me. "Mom told her friends you're moving out soon. Are you?" she asked one afternoon while I helped with her science project. The question caught me off guard. "This is the first I'm hearing of it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. A few days after the lottery win, I found apartment rental listings open on the family computer. Thinking it was a mistake, I closed them without much thought. The next day, more listings appeared, all for small, one-bedroom apartments in less desirable areas of the city. A knot formed in my stomach. Were they planning to move me out? Surely Justin wouldn't push his own mother out so abruptly after inviting me to live with them. 1 week after their lottery win, I got my answer. I was reading in my room when Justin knocked on my door, Melissa standing beside him with an expression I can only describe as triumphant. "Mom, can we talk?" Justin's voice had that artificial brightness people use when delivering bad news. They sat on my bed while I remained in my reading chair, my paperback novel still open in my lap. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," Justin began, not quite meeting my eyes. "With our new financial situation, we're going to be making some big changes. We're upgrading our lifestyle," Melissa cut in, her voice clipped and businesslike. "We'll be moving to a new house in Bellevue's Medina neighborhood. It's an exclusive community with security gates." "That sounds lovely," I said cautiously. "When would we be moving?" The uncomfortable glance between them told me everything before they spoke another word. "That's the thing, Claire," Melissa said, dropping all pretense of warmth. "The new house has a different setup. It's not really conducive to extended family." "What Melissa means," Justin interjected, "is that we think it might be time for you to have your own place. Somewhere you can have independence." My heart pounded in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. "I see. And have you found this place for me? We thought you might want to choose yourself." Justin said, pulling out printouts of the same apartment listings I'd seen on the computer. These are all within your price range, considering your pension. Melissa didn't bother hiding her impatience. Look, Claire, the situation has changed. We don't need your pathetic pension cash anymore. Her voice took on a cruel edge I'd never heard directed at me before. Justin and I want to enjoy our money without a constant reminder of our old life. The kids are old enough now that they don't need a babysitter. Melissa, Justin said weakly, but offered no real objection. Just saying what we're both thinking, she continued. We need to move on, start fresh. You understand, right? You can just go find somewhere else to live out your remaining years. The room fell silent. I looked at my son, waiting for him to defend me, to remember I was his mother, who had sacrificed everything for him. Instead, he stared at the carpet. How long do I have? I asked quietly. We're meeting with the realtor for the new house next week, Justin replied. So ideally, you'd be out by then. 7 days, I clarified. That should be plenty of time, Melissa said, standing up. It's not like you have much to pack. After they left, I sat motionless for nearly an hour. The betrayal cut deep, not just from Melissa, whom I never expected much from, but from Justin, my son, who I'd raised with values of family loyalty and compassion, was throwing me away now that I was no longer financially useful. That night, I allowed myself to cry for the first time since Robert died. I muffled my sobs with a pillow, not wanting to give Melissa the satisfaction of hearing my pain. I felt the full weight of my vulnerability and age pressing down on me. A soft knock interrupted my breakdown. I quickly wiped my eyes and opened the door to find Thomas and Amber standing there in their pajamas, faces etched with concern. Grandma, we heard what Mom and Dad said, Thomas whispered, his young face serious beyond his years. They can't make you leave. This is your home too. They're being mean, Amber added, her lower lip trembling. I don't want you to go. I pulled them into a hug, touched by their loyalty, but careful not to put them in the middle of adult problems. Sometimes grown-ups need to make difficult decisions. I told them, but I promise you'll always be part of my life, no matter where I live. As I held my grandchildren, a plan began forming in my mind. Justin and Melissa had revealed their true characters, but they had no idea who they were really dealing with. The next morning, after a nearly sleepless night, I waited until Justin and Melissa left for a meeting with their new financial advisor. I picked up my rarely used cell phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. Franklin Wealth Management. How may I direct your call? A professional voice answered. This is Claire Stevenson. I'd like to speak with Franklin, please. Mrs. Stevenson. Of course, I'll connect you right away. After a brief hold, a warm, familiar voice came on the line. Claire, I was just thinking about you. I saw the news about your son's lottery win. Congratulations to the family. Franklin Davis had been managing my and Robert's investments for over 25 years. Few people knew about our relationship with him, including Justin. Thank you, Franklin. That's partly why I'm calling. I need to make some changes to my living situation, and I'd like your advice. Of course. Would you like to come to the office? That would be best. How's 3 o'clock today? I'll clear my schedule. After hanging up, I went to my small closet and pulled out a locked box hidden beneath my winter sweaters. Inside was a portfolio containing documents Robert and I had maintained meticulously over decades. Our financial life was outlined in these pages, a life very different from the one our son believed we had lived. Robert and I had always lived modestly, a value instilled in both of us by parents who survived the Great Depression. But modest living didn't mean we weren't shrewd with our money. In the early 90s, Robert had befriended a computer programmer at the hospital where I worked. This young man told Robert about a small company he was joining that was developing something called internet browsing software. Against the advice of our friends, Robert invested $15,000 in this startup. That company was later acquired by one of the tech giants, turning our investment into over $2 million. Rather than changing our lifestyle, we reinvested. Over the years, we made similar early investments in other tech companies, some failing, but enough succeeding to build substantial wealth. Money doesn't change who you are, Robert always said. It just amplifies what's already there. We chose to keep our wealth private, even from Justin. We wanted him to develop his own work ethic and values, not rely on an inheritance. We lived in the same modest home we'd bought as newlyweds, drove sensible cars, and took reasonable vacations. Meanwhile, our investment portfolio grew to over $17 million. When Robert died, I maintained our modest lifestyle, out of both habit and respect for his memory. Moving in with Justin had seemed like a good way to help them financially, while enjoying time with my grandchildren. I never imagined I'd be discarded so quickly when they thought they no longer needed me. At exactly 3 o'clock, I walked into Franklin's downtown office. He greeted me with a warm hug and ushered me into his private meeting room. "How are you really doing, Claire?" he asked after we were seated. I took a deep breath and told him everything, from moving in with Justin to the lottery win and their demand that I leave within a week. Franklin's expression darkened as I spoke. "I've seen money change people, but this is particularly cold. What can I do to help? I need a place to live quickly. I was thinking of renting an apartment until I decide what to do long term." Franklin consulted his computer. "Claire, you own several investment properties. Why not use one of them?" I had forgotten about the real estate investments Robert and I had made over the years. Among them was a luxury condominium in downtown Seattle with stunning views of Puget Sound. "The Wellington Tower unit?" I asked, remembering the property. "It's currently rented to a young executive, but the lease is month to month. We could relocate him with appropriate compensation. Would that be possible within a week?" Franklin smiled. "For one of our most valued clients, absolutely. I'll handle everything." As we worked through the details, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness at my son's betrayal, but also a sense of empowerment I hadn't felt since Robert died. I had allowed myself to play the role of the financially dependent mother-in-law for too long. Before leaving, I asked Franklin about one more property. "What about the house Justin and his family live in now? The one I've been staying in?" Franklin checked his records. "That's owned by Stevenson Family Holdings, your trust. They've been paying rent to the trust, which gets reinvested." I nodded slowly. "And they don't know I'm their landlord?" "No. We use the corporate name as you and Robert instructed. The property management company handles all interactions." A plan was forming in my mind, not for revenge, but for a necessary lesson. "Don't change anything about that arrangement yet," I instructed. "Let's focus on getting me moved into the Wellington Tower first." As I left Franklin's office, I felt lighter than I had in days. Justin and Melissa thought they were evicting a financially dependent old woman. They had no idea who they were really dealing with. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity that I carefully concealed from Justin and Melissa. While they were out shopping for new luxury cars and meeting with real estate agents, I was coordinating with Franklin's team to prepare my new home. The current tenant of my Wellington Tower condominium was more than happy to relocate when offered 3 months of free rent in another luxury building and moving expenses covered. Franklin expedited the cleaning and preparation of my unit, and I worked with an interior designer to select new furniture and decor that would be delivered and set up before my arrival. Meanwhile, at Justin's house, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Melissa barely acknowledged my presence, while Justin avoided being alone with me, guilt evidently weighing on him, but not enough to change his mind. The children were another matter entirely. Thomas and Amber clung to me whenever their parents weren't watching, confused and upset by the impending separation. "Why can't you come with us to the new house?" Amber asked one afternoon while I helped her with homework. "There are 6 bedrooms. Mom showed me the pictures." "Sometimes adults make decisions that are hard for children to understand," I said carefully. "But I promise this isn't goodbye. We'll still see each other often." "Mom said you'll be living in a senior apartment across town." Thomas said, his face troubled. "That's really far from Medina." I smiled mysteriously. "Don't worry about that just yet. Sometimes things aren't what they seem." I took the children shopping that weekend, buying them special gifts to remember me by. For Thomas, a telescope he'd been eyeing for months. For Amber, a beautiful journal with a silver pen. "Write down your thoughts when you can't tell them to me in person," I suggested. "Someday, we can read them together." While shopping, I also quietly purchased a new wardrobe for myself. Nothing flashy or inappropriate for my age, but well-made, elegant pieces that reflected the woman I truly was, rather than the dowdy grandmother Melissa perceived. At home, I observed the changes money had already brought. Justin had quit his job without notice. Melissa had filled the house with shopping bags from designer stores. They'd purchased 3 new vehicles in cash, the price tags of which could have funded a child's entire college education. I also noticed their mounting stress. The initial euphoria was wearing off, replaced by arguments about spending and growing pressure from distant relatives and friends, suddenly interested in reconnecting. "Everyone wants a piece of us now," I overheard Justin complaining. "My cousin Eddie called today. Haven't heard from him in 15 years, and suddenly he has a business opportunity for me." "Just ignore them," Melissa dismissed. "Once we move to the gated community, we won't have to deal with the riffraff." The evening before my departure, we had one last dinner together as a family. Melissa had ordered expensive takeout again, barely touching her own portion. The conversation was stilted, with Justin making awkward attempts at small talk, while Melissa checked her phone constantly. After dinner, I gave the children their gifts privately. Both of them cried, Thomas trying to hide it, while Amber sobbed openly. "I have one more gift," I told them, handing each a sealed envelope. "But you can't open these until tomorrow afternoon, after I've left. It's a surprise." They promised solemnly, tucking the envelopes under their pillows. That night, I packed my few remaining belongings. Most of my clothing I donated, keeping only special pieces with sentimental value. My most treasured possessions, photo albums, and keepsakes from Robert went into 2 small suitcases. Everything else I would buy new. Morning came, and with it, my departure day. I dressed carefully, in one of my new outfits, a tailored navy pantsuit that Melissa had never seen before. I applied light makeup and styled my hair, looking in the mirror at a woman who appeared confident and 10 years younger than the grandmother who had moved in 3 years ago. I wheeled my suitcases to the front door just as Melissa was coming downstairs in her robe, coffee in hand. "Finally leaving?" she asked, not bothering to hide her satisfaction. "Yes, my ride will be here shortly," I replied calmly. Justin appeared, looking uncomfortable but relieved. "Do you need help with your bags, Mom? Where are you going?" "I've made arrangements," I said vaguely. And I can manage, thank you. Melissa smirked over her coffee cup. Well, I guess this is goodbye then. Good luck in your new situation. I smiled, feeling strangely serene. Before I go, I have a question for you both. Did you ever wonder why the rent on this house is so reasonable for this neighborhood? They exchanged confused glances. What do you mean? Justin asked. We have a good deal through the property management company. Why, I walked to the large front window, looking out at the well-kept lawn and flowering cherry trees Robert had planted decades ago. Sweetie, did you even know whose name is on the deed to this house? I asked softly. Silence fell over the room. The property management company, I guess, Justin replied, uncertainty creeping into his voice. Actually, no. This house is owned by Stevenson Family Holdings. I turned to face them, enjoying their confusion. That's my trust, established by your father and me 30 years ago. You've been paying rent to me all this time, though I had it reinvested rather than paid out. Their expressions transformed from confusion to shock. Melissa's coffee mug froze halfway to her lips. That's not possible, Justin stammered. You and Dad never had that kind of money. There's a lot you don't know about your father and me, I said. We made some excellent investments in the early tech boom. We chose to live modestly because that aligned with our values, not because we had to. Melissa finally found her voice. You're lying. You're just saying this because you're jealous of our lottery win. I laughed softly. I have nothing to be jealous of. My net worth is considerably more than your lottery winnings, even before taxes. A sleek black car pulled up outside, right on schedule. The driver, dressed impeccably, approached to collect my bags. You're welcome to continue renting the house, I said, walking toward the door. I have no intention of evicting you the way you've evicted me. The property management company will continue handling everything as before. I hugged my stunned son, whispering in his ear, Money doesn't change who you are, Justin. It just reveals it. I nodded politely to Melissa, who seemed frozen in place. The driver loaded my bags into the luxury sedan as I took one last look at the house where I'd raised my family. Where to, Mrs. Stevenson? The driver asked. Wellington Tower, downtown. I replied clearly, making sure Justin and Melissa could hear. As we drove away, I didn't look back. A chapter had closed, painful as it was. Now, it was time to begin a new one, on my own terms. 2 months passed quickly as I settled into my new life. The Wellington Tower condominium exceeded my expectations, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing panoramic views of Puget Sound and the Olympic Mountains beyond. I furnished it with comfortable elegance, hiring an interior designer who understood my preference for warmth over ostentation. I established new routines that energized rather than depleted me. 3 mornings a week, I volunteered in the pediatric ward at my old hospital, reading to children and providing comfort to parents. I joined a book club at the nearby library and took watercolor classes at the community center. I made new friends who knew nothing of my financial situation, people who enjoyed my company for who I was rather than what I had. The most precious part of my new life was my clandestine relationship with my grandchildren. Thomas and Amber had been shocked and delighted by what they found in the envelopes I'd left them, keys to my condominium and instructions for how to visit using the private elevator that wouldn't require check-in at the main security desk. Your parents need time to adjust to their new circumstances, I explained during their first visit. Until things settle, our time together will be our special secret. They loved the exclusivity of our arrangement, feeling grown up and important. Thomas particularly enjoyed the building's amenities, especially the rooftop swimming pool and game room. Amber adored helping me decorate, contributing her artistic eye to selecting artwork and throw pillows. Through them, I kept tabs on Justin and Melissa's increasingly chaotic new life. They had purchased a $12 million mansion in Medina, only to discover that the property taxes and maintenance costs were staggering. They'd filled it with expensive furniture and art. They didn't appreciate hired staff, they didn't know how to manage, and hosted lavish parties for people they barely knew. Dad argues with the financial advisors all the time, Thomas confided during one visit. He fired the first two. Mom goes shopping every day, Amber added. The closets are so full, she's using one of the spare bedrooms just for shoes and handbags. I wasn't surprised when my phone began displaying Justin's number with increasing frequency. At first, I let the calls go to voicemail, not quite ready to hear what he had to say. His messages started casually asking how I was settling in, then grew increasingly urgent. Mom, can you call me back? We need to talk about some family matters. Mom, I really need your advice on something important. Please call when you can. Mom, it's urgent. Please call me as soon as possible. From mutual friends and former colleagues, I heard concerning reports about Justin and Melissa's financial decisions. They had ignored advice to invest the bulk of their winnings conservatively, instead pursuing get-rich-quick schemes and speculative ventures. Melissa's cousin's friend, the supposed financial genius, had convinced them to invest heavily in a cryptocurrency that promptly collapsed. Their tax situation was another disaster. They hadn't set aside nearly enough for federal taxes, apparently believing their advisors were exaggerating the government's cut. The IRS was now scrutinizing their finances closely, with potential penalties looming. Meanwhile, their personal spending continued unabated. Designer clothes, luxury vacations, expensive jewelry, and custom vehicles drained millions from their accounts. Melissa had developed what Thomas described as a shopping addiction, unable to pass a day without acquiring something new. Their social lives had become a circus of hangers-on and opportunists. Old friends were replaced by celebrities and influencers who disappeared as quickly as they arrived. Melissa threw increasingly extravagant parties, each one trying to outdo the last. Justin and Melissa's relationship was suffering under the strain. Their arguments, once held behind closed doors, now erupted publicly at restaurants and events. Melissa had taken to drinking heavily at parties, while Justin seemed perpetually exhausted and on edge. I wasn't gloating over their troubles. In fact, I felt profound sadness, watching from afar as money destroyed what had once been a functioning, if imperfect, family. But I also recognized that intervening too soon would rob them of valuable lessons. Then came the evening that changed our family dynamic once again. I was enjoying a quiet dinner alone when my security desk called to announce a visitor. Mrs. Stevenson, your son, Justin, is here. Should I send him up? I took a deep breath, knowing this moment would come eventually. Yes, please do. Minutes later, a knock at my door revealed a very different Justin than the confident, dismissive man who had evicted me 2 months earlier. His hair was disheveled, dark circles shadowed his eyes, and he'd lost weight. His frame couldn't afford to lose. Mom, he said, his voice cracking. His eyes moved past me, widening as he took in my elegant condominium. This is where you live now. Come in, Justin, I said, stepping aside. Would you like some tea? He nodded mutely, following me to the open kitchen where I put the kettle on. He stood awkwardly in the center of my living room, turning slowly to take in the tasteful furnishings and stunning view. "Please sit." I gestured to the comfortable seating area. "Tell me what brings you here tonight." He collapsed onto the sofa, suddenly, looking every day of his 43 years, and then some. "It's all falling apart, Mom," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The money, our marriage, everything." I set a cup of tea before him and took a seat in the adjacent chair. "Tell me," I said simply. The story poured out of him. They had burned through over half their winnings in just 2 months. The tax bill was far larger than anticipated. Melissa's cousin's friend had disappeared with $2 million intended for an exclusive investment opportunity. Lawsuits were emerging from former friends, claiming they were owed portions of the winnings based on verbal agreements. "Melissa won't stop spending," he continued, running his hands through his hair. "She says, we're still rich, that we'll figure it out. But at this rate, we'll be broke within a year." "And the children?" I asked quietly. Justin's face crumpled. "They're miserable. They miss their old school, their old friends. The kids in Medina won't accept them. They miss you terribly." "They visit me regularly," I said. His head snapped up. "What? How?" I gave them keys and showed them how to use the private elevator. "They come after school sometimes, while you and Melissa are out." Rather than anger, relief washed over his features. "Thank God. I've been so worried about them. They've been so secretive lately." We sat in silence for a moment, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. "I don't know what to do, Mom," he finally admitted. "I need help." "What kind of help are you looking for?" I asked carefully. "Financial advice for starters, but more than that." He looked up, his eyes filled with remorse. "I need my mother. I was wrong to treat you the way I did. So terribly wrong. Can you ever forgive me?" I studied my son's face, seeing both the man he'd become and the boy I'd raised. The hurt he'd caused was real, but so was my love for him. "Forgiveness may take time," I said honestly, "but helping you is something I can do right now." The meeting I arranged the following week brought together Justin, Melissa, and my financial management team at Franklin's downtown office. Melissa arrived with obvious reluctance, her designer sunglasses failing to hide her bloodshot eyes. Justin looked marginally better than during his evening visit, having apparently gotten some rest. Franklin had assembled his best people, a tax specialist, an investment advisor, and a family wealth counselor. I sat quietly as introductions were made, watching Melissa's initial hostility gradually give way to desperation as the true extent of their financial predicament was laid bare. "Based on your current rate of spending and the outstanding tax obligations, you have approximately 7 months before insolvency," the tax specialist explained, displaying charts that made Justin wince and Melissa remove her sunglasses to stare in disbelief. "That can't be right," she protested weakly. "We won $63 million. After taxes, you received $34 million, the specialist corrected. "You've spent or committed nearly $20 million in just over 2 months. Franklin took over, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to their panic. "The good news is that with immediate intervention, we can salvage your remaining assets and create a sustainable financial plan." "What kind of intervention?" Justin asked. "First, we need to stop the bleeding," Franklin explained. "That means establishing a strict budget and adhering to it. Second, we need to properly invest what remains to generate income and growth. Third, we need to address the tax situation immediately to prevent penalties." As the team outlined their proposed strategy, I watched Melissa's face. The reality was finally sinking in. Their lottery windfall, which had seemed infinite just weeks ago, was finite and rapidly diminishing. When the financial presentation concluded, I spoke for the first time. "There's something else you both should know." All eyes turned to me. "Franklin's team doesn't just manage my condominium and the house you've been renting. They manage my entire portfolio, which includes multiple properties and investments valued at approximately $17 million. Melissa's jaw dropped. Justin, having had more time to absorb this information, simply nodded. "Your father and I built this wealth gradually over decades, making careful investments and living below our means. We chose not to tell you, Justin, because we wanted you to develop your own work ethic and values." I turned to Franklin. "I'd like your team to help Justin and Melissa restructure their remaining lottery winnings, using the same conservative approach you've used for my portfolio." Franklin nodded. "We'd be happy to, provided they're willing to follow our guidance." I addressed Justin and Melissa directly. "I'm offering my help, but it comes with conditions." "Anything?" Justin said quickly. Melissa hesitated, but nodded. "First, you'll work with a budget that Franklin's team approves. That means no more impulse purchases, no more excessive parties, no more status symbols you can't afford." They both nodded Melissa more reluctantly. "Second, we'll have weekly family dinners together, all of us, including the children." Justin smiled slightly at this. "That would be great, Mom." "Third, and most importantly, you'll both attend family therapy sessions. Not just financial counseling, but actual therapy to address the damage this situation has caused to your relationship with each other, with the children, and with me." This condition met with more resistance, particularly from Melissa. "I don't see why that's necessary," she objected. "Because money wasn't the root of our problems," I explained gently. "It merely exposed what was already there. If we don't address those underlying issues, we'll end up right back here, regardless of how much money we have." After some discussion and private consultation between themselves, they agreed to all conditions. As we prepared to leave, Melissa approached me hesitantly. The designer armor she'd worn so confidently 2 months ago now seemed to hang on her frame, her makeup unable to hide her exhaustion. "Claire," she began, using my first name, as she always had, "I want to apologize. The things I said to you, they were unforgivable." I regarded her thoughtfully. "You're right, they were. But that doesn't mean they can't be forgiven eventually. It will take time and consistent effort." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know what happened to me. It's like the money made me into someone I don't recognize or like." "Money doesn't create character flaws," I said. "It reveals and amplifies what's already there. The good news is that recognizing that is the first step toward change." Over the following months, our family began the slow, sometimes painful process of healing. The weekly dinners, initially tense and awkward, gradually became more relaxed as we established new patterns of interaction. The therapy sessions, while challenging, provided a safe space to address long-standing issues that predated the lottery win. Justin returned to work not at his old job, but at a nonprofit organization that aligned better with his values. Melissa, after initial resistance, discovered a talent for event planning, for charitable causes, using her social skills for something more meaningful than status-seeking parties. The children thrived with the return of stability and the regular presence of their grandmother in their lives. Thomas's grades improved, and Amber's anxiety symptoms subsided. They stopped keeping secrets from their parents about visiting me instead, becoming the bridge that helped reconnect our fractured family. As for me, I maintained my independent life at Wellington Tower while welcoming my family back into my heart. The betrayal had cut deep, but watching Justin and Melissa struggle to become better people healed wounds I hadn't realized still festered from Robert's death and my subsequent loneliness. Forgiveness came gradually, not in one dramatic moment, but in small increments. In Melissa's genuine interest in my volunteer work, in Justin's quiet conversations, seeking advice about parenting, in family game nights filled with laughter that had nothing to do with money or status. One Sunday evening, nearly a year after the fateful lottery win, we sat together on my balcony after dinner, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Thomas and Amber were inside arguing good-naturedly over a board game. "Do you ever think about how differently things could have turned out?" Justin asked, swirling the iced tea in his glass. "Every day," I admitted, "but I've learned that sometimes the most painful paths lead to necessary destinations." Melissa, more subdued, but more genuine than I'd ever known her to be, nodded. If we hadn't hit rock bottom, we might never have discovered what truly matters. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I thought about Robert. He would have handled this situation differently, perhaps with more immediate forgiveness and less strategic planning. But he also would have recognized, as I now did, that our family was stronger for having been broken and carefully mended. Money had nearly destroyed us. Not the having of it, but what it revealed about our characters and priorities. Yet in losing their fortune, Justin and Melissa had gained something far more valuable: authenticity, humility, and a renewed appreciation for family bonds that no lottery could ever provide. Has your family ever faced a crisis that eventually brought you closer together? Share your story in the comments below. And if you found value in my experience, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that even the deepest family wounds can heal with time, effort, and forgiveness. Thank you for listening, and remember that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the strength of the bonds we forge with those we love.